Hey there, welcome to another week where we dive into the ancient texts that have been collectively known as the Bible. We're studying Acts 23, and this page is all about unchanged truth in an ever-changing world. Whether you have been here for 8 years or you're just showing up for the first time tonight, everyone is welcome. If you're exploring spirituality for the first time, or if you are deeply rooted in your faith and beliefs, there is something here for everyone. Just glad that you have stopped by. These ancient writings that we are focusing on over the last year and a half has been in the book of Acts. It's written by a man named Luke, and he recounts the life and the journey of Paul. Paul, formerly known as Saul, is central to the expansion of the teachings of Jesus and the enlightenment that you can connect with God without connecting with religion. And that this direct connection with God through spiritual means, right? One spirit to the great spirit, can happen. And Paul has taken many journeys over his lifetime, adult lifetime, to have an understanding of that. He's a Jew, and he had this crazy, unfathomable, is unbelievable, how he had this encounter with God. And he explains everywhere he goes, first to the Jews and then to the Gentiles, how he connected directly with God and how we can too. And so Luke, who wrote the book of Acts, is a physician, was a physician, and he's also a non-Jew, which is one of the reasons why I love reading his writings, because they are very down to earth, they're very non-Jewish and non-religious. So you have an author who you can easily relate to without having to know about the Jewish background or the other religious backgrounds that there were during the time. And Luke's purpose in Acts is to show how the Holy Spirit guided Paul to carry Jesus's message to the ends of the earth. And in so doing, he started in Jerusalem and has been moving outward in his journey. So the book of Luke, in the beginning of what's known as the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, he wrote that also. And Luke came into the picture after Jesus's death, resurrection, ascension, after all of that. And he was part of the next generation of believers. And he's joining this ministry work, journeys with Paul, in order to, and especially Paul, in order to send out what we call in religious Christianity, the gospel message. So last week, we looked at Acts 23 through 30, and the Roman commander Claudius Lysias learned of this plot to assassinate Paul. And this group of 40 men said, "We are not going to eat or drink anything until this man is dead. And what we would like is for there to be a situation where he has to be brought out of jail, the barracks where he's being kept and actually protected from this mob." And so they devised this assassination plan. They go over to the religious Jewish council called the Sanhedrin, made up of Pharisees and Sadducees. They both are Jews, but they have different beliefs. So they have developed two factions, but they rule the governmental portion, if you will, of the Jewish faith. All of the political things that are happening during that time is being run by the Romans, and thus this Roman commander, Claudius Lysias, who's kind of gotten caught in the middle because he's a little unsure why these guys are so upset with Paul, who's also a Jew. And yet found out that Paul's also a Roman. And Romans cannot just be tried and convicted, cannot just be convicted without a fair trial. And so here we are. The Jews are plotting for the Sanhedrin to ask the commander to call Paul back. They'd like to question him a little bit more. And then when he comes out of the barracks and on his way to the council, then these 40 Jews are going to roll up on Paul and the people who are with Paul, the Roman centurions, and kill Paul right then and there. So the key takeaway from last week included this plot that we looked at, and also how once this plot was known by the commander through Paul's nephew, young nephew, decided, we're going to take a very large military escort and take him to the governor, the Roman governor, Governor Felix. And Lysias stated that in a letter that he had written to go with Paul and these 200 spearmen, soldiers, to escort him. There was a letter that also went that said, hey, I rescued this guy. There's accusations about Jewish religious laws. It's not crimes. So we're kind of out of the loop here. And plus, this guy's a Roman, and so he is entitled to a just trial. So he also mentioned that the assassination plot, and that he decided to send Paul to Felix immediately, and also had instructed the Jews, after Paul was well on his way, that the Jewish accusers, that they needed to present their case in Caesarea. So last week, we saw where God allows human free will, and that people make choices that are both for good and for harm. And the Jewish leaders' hatred revealed the danger of misused free will, while Paul's nephew reveals this assassination attempt to the commander. It shows courage and how integrity can protect life. So we talked about how our choices carry consequences, whether those be rewards, good consequences, or bad consequences, rewards or penalties. And when we act with courage, with honesty, the overbroad is with love, that we become instruments of good in a world shaped by human decisions. So this week, we're going to finish up in Acts 23. This is the last 5 verses, 31 through 35. And before I dive into this, I want to just give a quick shout out to Susan Molson. Her husband had revealed that she had a very, very serious accident. She and her brother were driving and were hit by a large truck. And she survived. Her brother needs prayer. So I just ask that as you think about, and even do it right now, just send some love over that way. And to Susan Molson and her husband, Bill, I just pray healing over her life, and that the Spirit of God would come and rest upon her. And also I pray for the restoration of her brother's life, and that everything would come into alignment in the natural and in the spiritual for him to survive this tragedy that has happened to them. Acts 23, verse 31. Following their orders, the soldiers took Paul during the night and brought him to Antipatris. The following day, they let the horsemen continue on with Paul, while they returned to the military headquarters in Jerusalem. The horsemen entered Caesarea, delivered the letter to the governor, and brought Paul before the governor. After he read the letter, he asked Paul about his home province. When he learned that Paul was from Cilicia, the governor said, "I will hear your case when your accusers arrive." Then the governor ordered that Paul be kept in custody in Herod's palace. Herod's palace. Let's talk about that for a minute. Herod refers here to Herod the Great. He was the original builder of the palace in Caesarea. And Herod the Great had ruled Judea when Jesus was born. And he's the one who ordered the killing of all infants in Bethlehem because the Magi had said, hey, there is a king that's being born in Bethlehem. And Herod was so furious that someone could rise up against him that he ordered all of these infant sons to be killed. And that's when Jesus's parents went on into Egypt and were spared. So Herod, very wealthy, Herod the Great built many, many structures of huge magnificence. The palace in Caesarea, for example, which later became the official residence of for Roman governors, like Felix. And by Paul's time, Herod was long dead, but these buildings still bore his name. And it served both as a government center and also a secure place to keep important prisoners who are awaiting trial, which included the likes of Paul. So Paul is holed up in Herod's palace. Not bad digs, really, for what it's worth, but nonetheless, he's in jail. What this passage means, I think, is important because we're seeing the movement of Paul from Jerusalem to Caesarea. He spends the night in a city along the way because it is somewhat of a journey. But these soldiers escort Paul, which shows how seriously that the Romans took Paul's safety and also how important they took his citizenship. I think the halfway point, Antipatris, by reaching it safely, Paul was out of the immediate danger. And I believe that once the Jews came to Claudius Lysias and said, hey, we'd like to see him again, that's when he informed them that, hey, Paul's long gone. We sent him up to Caesarea to see the governor. And so you're going to have to take it up with them up there. So they're going to have to work for it and take this journey, which is a couple of days. So Caesarea was the Roman administrative capital of this province, and Governor Felix was the Roman official, and he was the one that was hearing the legal cases. And while this looks like a routine government transfer, it's actually another step in God's promise, because the Spirit of God revealed to Paul that not only would he stand for his beliefs in Jerusalem, but also in Rome, in front of the Greeks. And here he is in Caesarea. So while it looks like it's routine, there's so much more unfolding here through ordinary events, authoritative legal systems, and human choices. So what are the life lessons that we can take away and live with on purpose today? I believe that protection comes through practical means, more oftentimes than not. And Paul wasn't rescued by angels here. He was protected by trained soldiers and legal systems. And God works through everyday structures and everyday people. it's not just miracles. And I think people always look for the miracles when really the miracles are embedded in people doing the right thing. The other thing that I think is important to note in the verses that we read tonight was that Paul's journey to Caesarea was dangerous and it was uncomfortable. He's being treated like a prisoner for something he didn't do. And it moved him closer to his destiny. So sometimes God advances us through hardship and relocation, and it doesn't maybe feel like it's progress at the time, but there are hardships that force relocations that ultimately are for our good. I remember when I was 11, 12 years old, my dad had lost work, and he had been out of work for like a year and a half. And it was during a time where there was a sharp, marked economic decline. And through that hardship, it forced us to relocate, basically from one coast to the other. And we moved from West Virginia to California. And it was such a culture shock for me in many ways, and considering that age as a preteen. But I realize now, looking back, how important that decision was for our family and how important that decision was for my own personal development. So if we give things some time and we're able to look back over it, we can see where the divine is always operating for the ultimate good, and that oftentimes happens through human choices. I think authority can be used for good. I know oftentimes when we hear that word authority, we feel suppressed or pressured, or it just seems to have a negative connotation when we say the word authority. But this Roman system, even though it was imperfect, it still provided justice that kept Paul alive. And you may say, yeah, but he's in jail. Yeah, he's not dead. So God can use anyone, anywhere, and through any system to accomplish plans and goals for ultimate good. It requires people making free will choices that are rooted in good intentions and love. Authority can be used for good. There are waiting seasons. I'll call them that. Seasons where we wait. And that's what Paul is doing here. He's kept in custody, but he's not forgotten. And this pause gave time for the next stage of his life to develop. And in our lives, waiting doesn't mean delay. I often say, tell me yes, tell me no, but don't tell me to wait. We want to know an answer so we can move. But waiting doesn't mean that we're being delayed. Waiting sometimes is divine preparation, that things need to develop before we can progress into the next season, into the next. I'm excited about a new season that I'm embarking on in my personal life, and I'm like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Right? Rather than enjoying the journey. It's good. There's no delay because we're having to wait. The timing is not always ours, right? I have a friend of mine who is in college, and she expected to graduate at the end of the school year in 2026. And she found out that when she met with the guidance counselor, she cannot take 3 of the classes that she needed to take next semester because in order to graduate, the requirements because they're not being offered. So now she has to go the following fall semester in 2026. Now, she was planning on graduating a year early. Now she's going to graduate a semester early. But nonetheless, she was disappointed. And at the same time, she said, I'm okay in waiting because I know that there may be other things that are happening in order to prepare me for what I'm getting ready to embark on after college. So I loved her perspective, right? That she was able to see it from a different lens. And I think that when we're able to see from a different perspective, it's a sign of maturity. Waiting seasons have meaning in them. So Acts 23, as we round out tonight, these last verses, 31 through 35, just reminds us that God's promises unfold step by step, and sometimes through government order or legal systems or travel logistics or even confinement. Human free will, structure, and responsibility play a key role in our purpose. God's plans don't always look supernatural. And sometimes it looks like protection. Sometimes it looks like paperwork. And sometimes it looks like patience. Next week, we're going to dive into Acts 24. I hope that you'll join me right here. Our videos drop Thursday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And I do hope that you will join us at a time that's convenient for you to stop by. We also try to put out encouraging posts and new music that's coming out. So I hope that you will tune in throughout the week as well. Hit the like, hit the share, and also hit the follow button. If you would like to send us a message, we'd love to pray for you, send you a Bible, get you connected with people in your local area. All you've got to do is send us a Facebook message. Somebody on the team will respond to you. God bless you.